Hi everybody. In this video I want to talk a little bit about a book which has been a bestseller in Europe for some time. It has been on the Spiegel's bestseller list for months, so to speak, and it's called Der Islamische Fascismus, written by Hamid Abdel Samad, who is considered to be some kind of Egyptian Salman Rushdie. He was sentenced to death by Islamic fundamentalists. So he is now under police protection and he is living in Germany. Hamid Abdel Samad grew up in Egypt, in Cairo, and went to Germany, where he became a writer. And he went back to Egypt to talk about Islam, and that was his mistake, so to speak. Yeah, and the book will be is currently prepared for being released on the English-speaking market. And the title will be simply Islamic Fascism. So the question is, should you get the book or not? And I will give you some background information, why I got the book and why I'm very pleased with the book. It really has a lot of information in it. It's a page turner and it's very interesting to read. But first, let's focus a little bit on current things. Let me have a little bit from a beer. It's a Perlenburg from Lidl, from the strong one, and it's the best replacement for Guinness which I can get here. So this video I want to dedicate to a certain guy in Terenure, Dublin. Cheers. Yeah. Okay. So that's a simplified map of Europe and Northern Africa. As you can see, Europe is basically surrounded by Islamic countries, and one should think about what's happening in North Africa or on the Arabian Peninsula. All those things have an influence on Europe. Yeah. So, for my background, I had always an interest in philosophy and religion. And when you look at the big philosophers, everything is beginning in the antique. We had Socrates, we had Buddha, we had Jesus. And they share many things. They had followers. They had more like a schooling principle, that they were teaching something. And even Jesus and Socrates, they were not, how can I say, dogmatic. Later on, the Buddhists and Christians, they became dogmatic. But the founders, they were very little dogmatic, or not dogmatic at all. Muhammad, on the other hand, he is a different story. First of all, Muhammad appeared rather recently compared to the other ones. Buddha is way, let's say, older in this sense, and Socrates. So that's why I place Muhammad and on the same level like the FSM, the Flying Spaghetti Monster. This is just a different league. I'm not insulting anybody. This is a different league. Muhammad doesn't fit into the circle of the old teachers. That's what I'm trying to say here. So this year we had in Europe some very terrible things going on. We had terrorist attacks, and it began in January with the attack on Charlie Hebdo, And this here is the first issue which was printed after the attack. So they survived, so to speak. Many people died, but how can I say, the freedom of press is continuing in Europe. Europe is still alive, so to speak. And but this was not everything, it became worse. And just 2 weeks ago, there was a big attack in Paris where about 130 people were killed by fundamentalists. And that's here the Charlie Hebdo after the attack. Well, we have champagne, they have the arms, but we have fooled them, you know. It's a certain kind of humor, but that's the freedom of the press. You have to accept other people's opinion. So, where is the fascism in the Quran? And Abd al-Samad begins basically in chapter 1 with some definitions by Umberto Eco, where Umberto Eco is saying that fascism has a certain oral tradition, it creates enemies, there's always a conspiracy going on. When you think of Hitler, Hitler was so convinced that some Jewish forces prevented Germany from winning the First World War, that he had to make a Second World War. And communists were also part of the conspiracy and so on. So in chapter 1, Abd al-Samad explains the similarities between dictatorships and fascist ideologies. And he also goes on to say that regimes like Hitler Germany or Stalin's Russia and Iran, they have many similarities. They suppress intellectuals, they suppress minorities and so on. They have many, many similarities. That's what chapter 1 is about. Yeah, he moves on to talk about Al-Husseini, who fled from Europe after the Second World War and became a member, so to speak, of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. This is the main focus on chapter 2. It's about the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. And it goes back especially on the time of the Third Reich and what links and similarities are between the Muslim Brotherhood and the Third Reich. And chapter 3 is very interesting and important. It tells the history of Prophet Muhammad, and it's telling this time in Mecca, then he moved to Medina, where he became stronger, he came back to Mecca, and he became more radical over the time. And that's basically what chapter 3 is about. It also tells that Islam was, after the death of Muhammad, Islam, there was a confusion going on, and it was not clear what direction it should take and so on. Baghdad, for example, became rather liberal. There was a lot of art, poetry, it was a bit multicultural and so on. Then chapter 4 is titled Arabian Anti-Semitism. That's the focus of chapter 4. It brings certain passages and quotes of the Quran and explains that why is it possible that even Muslims in regions as Morocco have an anti-Semitic attitude. This is totally nonsense. There are no big populations, there are not many Jewish people in Morocco, and so on. And he links a little bit, he brings in that a lot of anti-Semitism goes back to the Third Reich, where the Third Reich had contacts to the Arabian world, and so there's a link between the Third Reich and and the Islamic world. But the big problems lay in the Quran itself, where where it is mentioned that Jewish people should be killed, and only the final judgment can happen when all Jewish people are being killed. So this is a very serious thing, actually, this chapter. And chapter 5 concerns the downfall of Islam. It shows or talks about that Islam became more radical as they suffered military defeats. Leaders blamed a lack of faith for military defeat. So that was that was the reason why Islam became more radical over time, and this goes on even to the printing press. When Europe flourished because of knowledge, and it was the other way in the Arabian world. The printing press was considered as a devil's machine by religious leaders. Yeah, chapter 6 concerns failed states like Afghanistan. There's a title called Hail Osama, and it concerns the 9/11 attacks and so on. And chapter 7 is very short but very interesting. And chapter 7 concerns the pornotopia of paradise. It concerns what the paradise is promising when a martyr dies and enters heaven, so to speak. And it goes on that we know everything, that those 72 virgins, and even those 72 virgins, each virgin has another 70 female servants, so each martyr gets eventually over 5,000 virgins. It's just plain madness. Yeah, chapter 7 also goes a little bit on to talk about the Sharia in Iran, and they have special laws in Iran. There's even this law that you can stone a woman to death if she betrays the husband. So this shows actually how, this is now my opinion a bit, but this shows how Islam and Christianity differ. Jesus, who also comes from this part of the world, he tried to give rights to women, to have a fair trial, not to be stoned to death by some village people. And Islam still is continuing this 2000 or whatever age it is old tradition. So this is chapter 7. And chapter 7 goes on about the ridiculous laws which they have in Iran. And now I have been very brave, and I have drawn Prophet Muhammad's testicles, you know. And this is that's the law in Iran. If you damage the testicles of a man for the right testicles, for the right testicle you have to pay 33.3 camels worth of money. For the left testicles you have to pay 66.6 testicles, camels for the testicle. So the difference is explained because the right testicle produces female sperm, and the left testicle produces male sperm. Yeah, this just it's just madness. Yeah. So chapter 7 is really, it's not an easy issue. Okay. Chapter 8 concerns Iran once more. It's about Ayatollah Khomeini and his background, his rise, and his time abroad, and all those things. Yeah, it's still interesting for people who didn't know, and I learned many things from this chapter. Chapter 9 is concerned about the Arabian Spring, and it has 5 examples of atheists who live in Muslim countries where Arabian Spring happened, and shows that eventually they suffer a lot, that they are persecuted, and so on. Chapter 10 concerns Islamic fascism in Europe. It brings examples of European Muslims going to Syria to fight for the Islamic State, and so on. And chapter 11 brings into the games the German politician and writer Sarrazin and Erdogan, and compares two political movements, so to speak. Yeah, so the question is, should you get the book or not? And I say, if you want to learn a little bit about the background, about what's going on in the Muslim world and in Arabia and so on, yeah, this is a very good book. It's a page turner, and yeah, it's worth reading. Thanks for your attention.